welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be creating 3 men's cards, and we're going to be using this kit that you get free with the latest Indigo Blu magazine box kit. And I'm a really big fan of these box kits because I think you get so much stash for your money. So with this set you get some stickers, and they're really useful. You get everything from like birthday wishes to thinking of you, thanks, congrats, happy birthday, beautiful mindsets. You've got all sorts of different card things there, and it's on loads of different fonts as well. So you've got really nice ones for whoever you're giving to. Then we've got this gorgeous stencil set, and I really love these patterns. I'm going to be using that quite a bit today. Then we've got this die, which is really lovely, and you can see here that's how it cuts out. Then we've got this gorgeous big stamp set with loads of kind of textures, but also some really lovely floral and nature type stamps. I actually really like this one that's got the flowers in the front and this kind of cross hatch in the background. And then we've also got this big paper pad. So this normally comes in the middle of the magazine. And we've got some really gorgeous patterns in here. So you've got some quite plain ones that you could use for backgrounds or die cuts and things, and you've got some really gorgeous patterns as well. So you've got your cutouts here, so you've got some sentiments, some pieces that you can cut out and use as focal points. This is really lovely, isn't it? And I could feel like you could do some really nice inking and colouring techniques on these as well. And I've kind of messed up the order of mine a bit. So there's 2 of each. I think I might have shown you them all now. Yeah, I think that's all of them. So today I'm going to start with a zigzag card. So I've got an 8 1/4 by 10.5 inch piece of cardstock, and I'm going to score that at 3.5 inches and at 7 inches. And I'm going to bring in my trimmer. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in at 4 inches. And I'm going to cut this across to 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to line up that cut on the 3.5 inches line and this edge here on my line. In fact, I'm going to cut off this piece here because I think that will make it easier to see. So then I'm going to line up this piece here and this corner here. With zigzag cards I've made in the past, I've cut all the way down like that, but this one I wanted a straight edge on. And that's our card blank, so this will be the front and that folds round. So then I've cut a strip of this piece of paper, and it's got this blue pattern on the back and this red pattern on here. So then I'm going to make sure that this flower pattern's upside down, so I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to put it so that you've got a gap at each side, and I'm going to eyeball roughly a double gap at the bottom because I want a gap up here. You'll see how that works in a minute if that's not making sense. So then I'm going to turn that over, and I'm just going to use the edge to draw a line here. So then I'm bringing in my trimmer, I'm going to cut along that line, and then you'll see I've got that lovely map to go in there. But what's even better is that it's cut this at the right angle for in here. So I just want a bit of that red peeking out. And they get slightly bigger at the bottom here, but I'm not worried at all about that. If you were worried about that, then you could always just use the same method that I used for doing this, just to cut this one off as well and make it the same length. So now that I've got my mats cut, I'm not going to glue them down yet in case I make a mistake on the front of the card. I'm going to take this stencil piece here. I'm going to bring in a scrap of paper, and I'm going to tape this across my card. I'm going to use some of this yellow tape. This is from Spellbinders, and actually I'm not going to use a fresh piece of tape because I've still got these pieces from the last time I did something like this, and honestly it's so strong that it seems to be lasting me like quite a few goes of doing something, but it's not too sticky, so it's not like ruining my projects. So I'm really liking that. Actually, I'm going to use one of these older pieces because it won't be as sticky, just to mask that a little bit at the bottom as well. So now I've got my VersaMark ink refill. I'm going to just pop a few drops onto this acrylic block, and then I'm just going to pounce some of it across here with this smoothie blending tool. You can see I've got a bit of excess at the top, so I'm going to have to be careful with that and make sure that I don't put embossing powder on it, or if I do, it needs to get wiped off. So I'm just going to pour this downwards like this. I can see I've just got a bit on that, but I didn't want to, but we can brush that off in a second. You can see I can just wipe that off. Luckily it's quite far away from the other bit, so I don't need to use anything too delicate to get it off with. So then I'm going to heat that up. I've just got some Layering Stars dies, and these are old X-Cut ones, but I'm sure lots of you have Layering Stars in your stash, or you could use other shapes if you don't. And I'm going to cut some of these. I'm going to use the smaller ones, and I cut some of those from these papers and also from gold cardstock. So now I've got some stars to embellish the front of my card. So now I'm going to glue down all the pieces, and you'll notice that I've swapped this from this. I decided actually that I didn't like this texture with the circles on the card and that this pattern went better, so I've swapped it for that. I just used the floral piece that I'd got as a template, and I used it to cut this out instead, and then I feel like everything went better. And I'm making sure that these lines line up nicely as well, because that will help the look of the card. So then I'm going to adhere these down. I'm going to use something to cover up a bit of this so that it kind of blends into the card a bit more. Doesn't look like a mistake. And then I'm going to use some foam pads to pop up the smaller stars. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this birthday wishes sticker, and I thought actually I can colour it with my alcohol markers. I'm going to take this crimson Altenew marker and I'm going to colour this in crimson. And that just gives that sentiment, kind of my more vibrant look that I wanted. So then there's that first card finished, and you can either write on the back in a gold pen or paint pen or something like that, or you can add a white panel to the back as well. So then for the second card, I'm going to make a centre stepper card, but I want to create lots of texture. So I'm going to create some texture panels that I can then cut up to use on my card. So I'm going to create a panel with this stem. I'm just going to heat emboss that in gold. I could do one with this stamp as well. Now I'm going to cut these pieces up, so it doesn't matter if it's not kind of perfect all the way. You can see I'm using a piece of card with a score mark down it because I'm not going to use the whole thing. So I'm going to emboss those in gold. So now you can see we've got those two cool textured panels. And then I've also embossed a panel using my stencil. So you can see I've just taped this onto my cardstock. So I've put it through my die cutting machine, and I've used the same sandwich as I would a normal embossing folder, not a thick embossing folder, just a normal one. And then I added a couple of extra pieces of cardstock as shims as well. So you can see I've got a nice bit of texture on that now. Hope you can see that on camera. And then I'm going to use a stencil again just here, and I'm going to use some Stormy Sky Distress Oxide ink through it. Then I've got another panel. So then I've cut these panels down. So obviously I have not used the whole panels, I've still got plenty left. But I've cut them to roughly 1 by 1 1/4 inches with a piece of gold cardstock about 1/8 of an inch larger. And what I've done to make these shapes, which are a bit more interesting than just plain rectangles, is just to take a corner rounder punch. This is a really old Woodware collection one, but I think a lot of people have corner rounders already in their stash. And I'm just punching this in opposite diagonals, and the same with the, in opposite corners, and the same with the gold. And then I'm going to put those aside for a second while I make my card blank. So this is going to be a centre stepper card. So I've got an A6 card blank in Dusty Blue from the Paperbox Limited. And then this piece is 3 inches by 8 inches. I'm going to score that at 4 inches and at 6 inches. And then I can fold that like that. So I'm going to bring my scrap paper back in. And I'm going to grab this chipped sapphire distress ink. And I'm going to use this panel here. And I'm going to make sure that it covers either end of the card. The middle is going to be covered by this panel, so I'm not worried about the middle at all. And I'm going to do it this end as well. And if I was worried about this centre panel, then I'd be masking this off. But I don't need to mask that because I'm going to cover it up. So then I've got this piece of navy cardstock, and that is 4 1/8 inches by 3 1/4 inches. And I'm using the grid lines on my mat to line it up in the centre and also make sure it's on straight. And then I'm going to glue along the underside of this piece, which is our easel piece. And I'm going to pop that onto the navy piece. So then I've got this 4 by 3 inch piece of the Dusty Blue cardstock. And I'm going to just glue these onto it. So I'm going to glue them together first. And then I can position them on here. So you can see I've got like a textured one. I've got some of this one with the kind of writing. I've got bits of all 4 of the panels we created earlier. And I just think that rounding those corners really makes a difference because it makes it a much more interesting shape rather than just having a load of rectangles on there. The other thing that it does is hide a multitude of sins, because it's much easier when all the corners are straight to see if you've not cut something quite straight, which is obviously quite easy with these quite small shapes. But rounding the corners somehow hides that a little bit. So I'm going to glue every other one down. So I'm going to glue this one, this one, and this one. Then I'm going to pop the other ones up with foam pads just to add a little bit more interest. So that just adds that extra bit of texture. So now I'm going to glue that onto here. So I'm just going to add some glue onto the bottom of here. You can see then when our card's closed, it's going to look like that. So then I'm going to take this little thank you stamp from the stamp set, and I'm going to take a piece of navy blue cardstock, and then I'm going to use my VersaMark ink pad, and I'm going to heat emboss this in gold. Now I'm going to pour gold embossing powder over it. The one I use is the Ultimate Antique Gold Crisp Embossing Powder, and it's a nice fine powder, so it's perfect for like sentiments and things. So then I'm going to put these 2 pieces that we've got left over down here. I'm going to put them so that they kind of complete the pattern, but I'm going to put both of those flat. And then I'm going to put some foam strips behind my sentiment. So this is going to act as the stopper for my easel. So then that is that one done. So there's the full view. You can see it just stands up really nicely behind that thank you. And then when you put that down, so it'll go in the post like that, and then the recipient can pop it up. I think that looks really nice to stand on a mantelpiece or something. So then for my final card, I've got an A6 navy blue card blank. I've got a piece of brushed gold cardstock that is 1/4 of an inch smaller than that. That's SIZZIX gold cardstock. And then I've got another piece of navy that's 1/4 of an inch smaller than that. So then I'm going to bring in my now rather messy piece of scrap. So then I'm going to place this on here, one side. I'm going to take that down. And then I'm going to use the same technique as I did earlier with heat embossing through the stencil. But I thought this time I'd use my ink pad so that you can see what you do if you don't have the ink refill. So I'm just really pouncing this through. And you want to push down quite hard so that you're really getting a good layer of the ink through there. And you want to go over it a couple of times as well. So I do prefer the ink refill method because it's easier to make sure you've got a nice even coverage, but this does work well as well. So then I'm going to pull that up, and then I'm going to pop this on the other side as well, and it doesn't quite meet in the middle, but that's fine because we're going to cover that up in the middle in a minute. So let's do the same again on this side. I want to be careful not to get it through there. It's the other reason that the refill's easier, because the whole ink pad to worry about, whereas the other one you can use the sponge dauber and it makes it easier not to get it anywhere else. So then I'm going to flip this paper over because I don't want all my embossing powder to stick to the areas where I've just put that VersaMark on. So then I'm just going to cover this with the gold embossing powder. So then let's heat that up. Then we've got this really cool panel, and like I said, we don't have to worry about this bit down the middle because that's going to end up getting covered over. So then I've cut a piece of this red paper from the pack, the same size as this. So then I'm going to use this piece of cardstock as a ruler. I don't have a ruler on hand. I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner on the back of here. So then I've drawn my line from that corner to that corner, so I want to cut between the other two corners. So I'm going to line those two corners up on here. And then I want to cut between the other two corners as well, but obviously the other two corners aren't still there. So that one is where our line comes in useful. So then we're going to just cut along that line on each of the pieces. So then I've cut some thin strips of the gold cardstock, and I'm just going to use these two pieces. So you could actually make this again and use the other two pieces on a different card. And then I've die cut this sentiment from the pack just with some layering circle dies, and I've used the die that's one size bigger to cut a circle from some of the same gold cardstock. So now we can put this together. And you see how these red triangles cover up that piece in the middle of this cardstock, so that was why we didn't need to worry about having that line down the middle. And I'm going to glue the sentiment onto the gold piece as well. And then I'm going to grab my scissors and trim these corners. So then I can glue the layers together. And I can glue this onto my card front. And then I'm just going to add some foam pads behind my sentiment. And there's our final card for today. And so then there are all 3 of today's cards. So some nice masculine cards that use very little product that's not from the kit. Stuff that will be in most people's stashes. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's projects. Let me know which is your favourite in the comments below. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd appreciate you clicking like below, and you can press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got new videos available. All of the products that I've used to create today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.